$47.3 million laundered through corner storefronts, 162 weapons seized. Tonight, we expose who protected it.
Today, I am designating MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization. This gang has operated with impunity on American soil for far too long. That ends now. Those words, delivered from the Oval Office on January 20th, 2025, carried the weight of nearly 3 decades of unsolved murders, shattered communities, and a criminal network so deeply embedded in American cities that it had become almost invisible. But invisible was exactly how they wanted it. For 17 in the morning, the streets of Hempstead, Long Island, are empty. A light mist clings to the low-income apartment buildings along Front Street. The only sound is the distant hum of a highway overpass. 3 unmarked SUVs sit stationary in a church parking lot 2 blocks north, engines off, lights dark. Inside those vehicles, 12 federal agents, FBI, Homeland Security Investigations, and IC Enforcement and Removal Operations, are watching a second-floor window where a single ceiling light has been burning for 4 hours straight. They have been here since 1:53 a.m. They have been building this case for 22 months. What was happening inside that apartment was not unusual for MS-13. What was unusual was that federal investigators were now watching 74 locations across 11 cities simultaneously, from Los Angeles to Boston to Houston to Charlotte. Every door would breach within the same 6-minute window. More than 1,100 confirmed gang members and associates arrested. 19 cities, 14 federal districts. The single largest coordinated FBI and IC enforcement action against MS-13 in United States history. And before we go any deeper into this, if you want clear, fact-based breakdowns of real federal operations with no spin, no politics, just documented evidence, subscribe right now. Because this story is far bigger than any single headline made it seem, and what we're about to show you only gets more extraordinary. MS-13, Mara Salvatrucha, did not become America's most dangerous street gang by accident. It grew in the shadows of a system that was never designed to see it. To understand how federal agents dismantled this operation, you first have to understand how investigators found it. It started not with a murder tip, not with a confidential informant, but with a paperwork error. In March 2023, a routine IC field office review in the Baltimore district flagged a pattern in deportation documentation. 11 individuals with prior removal orders, all deported within a 36-month window, had re-entered the country and re-established residency within the same 4-block radius in Prince George's County, Maryland. That was statistically improbable. It was not random. Analysts pulled the thread. Each individual had cross-reference connections, the same phone number appearing in arrest reports from 4 different states, the same employer identification number on 2 separate sets of tax documents filed in Virginia and Texas, and a single Salvadoran area code that appeared across 47 field reports in 7 FBI field offices over a 16-month span. None of those reports had ever been linked. They were filed in different cities by different agencies under different case numbers. No one saw the full picture until Special Agent Dana Vieira in the FBI's Long Island Gang Task Force ran a financial cross-correlation analysis in September 2023. What she found did not fit the normal pattern of street-level gang economics. MS-13 cliques in the United States do not typically function as a centralized criminal enterprise. They operate in semi-autonomous cells called cliques, each controlling its own territory, its own revenue, its own recruits. That decentralization is precisely what makes the gang so difficult to dismantle. Cut one clique and the others survive untouched. But what Agent Vieira's analysis revealed was that 23 separate MS-13 cliques spread across Maryland, Virginia, New York, Massachusetts, Texas, California, and North Carolina were all routing drug proceeds through the same 3-tier underground banking network. A series of informal money transfer businesses operating legally as remittance services. Storefronts selling wire transfers to El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. Perfectly legitimate on the surface. The businesses filed tax returns. They maintained commercial leases. They employed licensed staff. What they also did was launder an estimated $47.3 million in narcotics proceeds across an 18-month operating window, moving cash in increments below the $10,000 federal reporting threshold, a technique known as structuring, through 214 individual accounts spread across 9 financial institutions in 6 states. Treasury investigators would later describe the network as one of the most sophisticated informal value transfer systems they had encountered in over 2 decades of financial crime prosecution. Make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next shows exactly how deep this network actually went and why it stayed hidden for as long as it did. The narcotics pipeline feeding those accounts ran from Central America through the Texas-Mexico border crossing points at Laredo and McAllen, with secondary distribution hubs in Houston's North Side and the Langley Park corridor in Maryland. MS-13 did not control the full trafficking chain. That level of logistics required Mexican cartel infrastructure, specifically a working arrangement with a Sinaloa-affiliated cell that handled cross-border transport. What MS-13 controlled was distribution. Street level, neighborhood level, apartment complex level distribution of methamphetamine, fentanyl-laced heroin, and crack cocaine. The drug quantities seized during the later operation would measure out to 127 kilograms of methamphetamine, 43 kilograms of fentanyl compound, and 68 kilograms of heroin. Enough combined lethal doses to chemically affect every resident of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area twice over. But the drugs were never the primary product MS-13 was selling. The primary product was fear. In Langley Park, Maryland, a dense, immigrant-heavy suburb just outside Washington, D.C., MS-13's Hollywood Locos Salvatrucha clique had established a grip on the local economy that local residents understood intimately but could rarely report. Small business owners paid weekly tribute, amounts ranging from $200 to $800 depending on the establishment's size, or faced consequences that ranged from property destruction to targeted violence. Recruiting happened in middle school hallways. Younger members as young as 13 years old were used as lookouts and delivery runners, their age insulating them from federal prosecution. Maria Orellana, a Salvadoran-born mother of 3, ran a pupuseria on University Boulevard for 7 years. She paid the Langley Park clique $350 every Friday. She never called the police. She told investigators later, when the operation was complete and the street leaders were behind bars, that she had not believed anyone would come. She said she had been in El Salvador during the worst of the war there. She said this felt the same. That testimony, delivered in a Prince George's County federal courthouse, became central to a RICO indictment that named 38 defendants. Now, the operation itself. Federal agencies had been quietly coordinating since January 2024 under a joint task force organized by the FBI's Transnational Organized Crime Program and IC Homeland Security Investigations. The operation was designated Operation Iron Tide. It involved 847 federal agents and officers across 14 federal judicial districts, coordinated with 31 state and local law enforcement departments, and executed with the logistical precision of a military campaign. The pre-dawn execution window was selected for tactical and legal reasons. Courts have consistently upheld the legality of pre-dawn entries in gang suppression operations where flight risk is assessed as extreme. Every target location had been under physical or electronic surveillance for a minimum of 60 days. Warrants were sealed, obtained, and distributed to team commanders at 11:47 p.m. the night before execution. No target was served a warrant electronically. Every document was hand-delivered to field team leaders to prevent any digital signal breach that could compromise the operation. 4:22 a.m. The breach signal goes out simultaneously across all 19 target cities. In Hempstead, New York, the apartment on Front Street takes a battering ram entry in 1.9 seconds. No flashbang. Thermal surveillance conducted 40 minutes earlier had identified 2 occupants in the main bedroom and a third near the kitchen. Agents make contact in 11 seconds. The primary target, a cleat shot caller wanted on a federal racketeering indictment and 2 open homicide warrants in Nassau County, is found seated at a kitchen table. He does not resist. He has been awake. In Houston, Texas, a warehouse in the North Side neighborhood with a legitimate commercial cleaning company registered front is breached at the same moment. K-9 units deployed ahead of the entry team locate 43 individually wrapped bundles of narcotics concealed beneath a false floor constructed under the warehouse's industrial shelving units. The concealment space, 11 feet long, 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep, was built into the concrete foundation during a permitted renovation in 2022. The building inspector who signed off on that renovation is later placed under a federal obstruction inquiry. In Los Angeles, 3 simultaneous entries in the Pico Union neighborhood target members of the Fulton Locos clique, one of MS-13's most active West Coast cells. Agents recover 14 firearms, including 2 short-barreled rifles with illegal suppressors, 3 ghost guns assembled from unregistered components, and a .50 caliber semi-automatic pistol. They also recovered 22 cell phones for encrypted laptops and a ledger written in a coded notation system that FBI analysts would spend 11 days fully deciphering. In Boston, in Charlotte, in Northern Virginia, in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., the pattern repeats. Doors open. Handcuffs click. Evidence bags fill. By 6:09 a.m. Eastern Time, 1,074 of the 1,131 targets are in federal custody. 47 remain at large, triggering secondary fugitive operations through the U.S. Marshals Service. 31 of those 47 would be apprehended within the following 96 hours. The remaining 16 became subjects of Interpol Red Notices, with El Salvador's National Civil Police operating as the primary international coordination partner. The final inventory of seized assets was staggering in its scope. Beyond the 238 kilograms of combined narcotics, agents recovered $4.7 million in U.S. currency, $1.2 million in cryptocurrency across 17 digital wallets, 162 firearms with 41 illegally modified or unregistered, and 312 items of digital evidence, including encrypted communications and gang command documents. Federal prosecutors in 9 districts filed superseding RICO indictments targeting the leadership tiers of 23 separate MS-13 cliques. The charges included racketeering conspiracy, murder in aid of racketeering, narcotics trafficking, human trafficking, firearms violations, and money laundering. 46 defendants face mandatory minimum sentences of life without parole. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, standing at a podium flanked by IC Director Tom Homan and FBI field commanders, described the operation in direct terms. MS-13 is not a street gang, she said. It is a designated foreign terrorist organization, and today we treated it like one. But here is what the press conference did not say. Here is what this operation actually revealed about the vulnerability of the American system. MS-13 did not hide in darkness. It hid in plain sight. It hid inside tax-registered businesses and legitimate remittance services. It hid inside permitted construction projects and licensed commercial cleaning companies. It used the same financial infrastructure, the same legal business registration systems, and the same immigration and residency documentation that millions of law-abiding people use every single day. The gang's concealment method was not technological sophistication. It was bureaucratic camouflage. It exploited the volume, the fragmentation, and the jurisdictional isolation of American law enforcement systems. The 747 federal prosecutions that preceded this operation over nearly a decade consistently targeted clique members and street-level operators. What Operation Iron Tide targeted for the first time at this scale was the financial tier, the money handlers, the front business operators, the underground bankers, the layer of the network that kept every other layer alive. What no single arrest, no single raid, and no single headline can fully capture is that the communities most affected by MS-13's presence were not the ones federal officials stood in front of at the press conference. They were the communities like Langley Park and Hempstead and Pico Union, where residents like Maria Orellana paid every week in silence, not because they didn't want help, but because the help had never seemed real before. For those communities, the morning of the operation was not just a law enforcement event. It was the first time in years that fear had a ceiling. MS-13 operates in 42 states and the District of Columbia. It maintains between 6,000 and 10,000 members inside the United States alone. Operation Iron Tide removed more than 1,100 of them from those streets in a single morning. What comes next will determine whether the financial infrastructure they built gets fully dismantled or simply restaffed. Because the precedent this operation sets is not just about MS-13. It is about every transnational criminal network that has learned to survive inside American systems by looking like a legitimate piece of them. If one designated terrorist organization could run an informal banking network through licensed remittance storefronts across 9 financial institutions for 18 months without detection, the question federal investigators are now asking is not just who else was connected to MS-13. The question is, what other networks built the same system, chose a different city, and are still running it right now? That is not a rhetorical question. That is an active federal case. And the answer is not going to fit in a single operation. What do you think this means for the future of how the federal government identifies and dismantles networks that hide inside legal systems? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what time it is where you're watching and which part of this story stayed with you. If this investigation stayed with you, hit like and subscribe so these stories keep reaching the people who need to hear them. The work of documenting how these operations happen, the real mechanics, the real evidence, the real human cost, only continues when this community grows. We will keep going as long as you're with us.